This is the 2016 IZIP E3 Peak. It's a hardtail electric mountain bike or trail bike. You can see these tires here are not super knobby, 27.5. So it's between the more nimble 26 and the larger, it's kind of more steady 29ers. I was comparing this to the Raleigh Tacoma IE, which looks very, very similar. These are both products from the Excel Group, which also owns Hi-Bike. And they tend to work pretty well for their respective applications. This one tends to be a little bit more of a commuter bike, in my opinion. It's set up with those smaller wheels versus 29ers on the Tacoma. You can see that there are frame mount bosses for adding a rack and even fenders if you wanted to. No bottle cage, and that's because there's just not a whole lot of room on that seat tube there. Some of the other differences that I noticed are that this one has a 15mm through axle on the front and a 12mm axle at the rear. So it's actually a little bit stiffer. It's gonna make lining those disc brakes up a little bit easier. Those are 180mm hydraulic disc brakes, M395 from Shimano. Nice little 2-finger levers there. They do not have motor inhibitors. The motor is pretty responsive, but it's not the most responsive mid-drive I've tried. It tends to feel a little bit more like a cadence sensor. The other difference here is that this one has rebound adjust on the fork. It's SR Suntour versus RockShox. The other one has preload adjustment. They both have lockout, which is kind of nice though. The E3 Peak comes in 17 and 19-inch frames, whereas the Tacoma also has a 21-inch frame. So if you're a taller person, that might be a good option for you. This one has a different headset. It's got low-rise bars versus just flat bars on the Tacoma. And this one has a wider seat tube, which is interesting. So 31.6. Otherwise, the motor is very similar. I'm just going to jump into that. This is Transx M07. It's the high torque motor. So 350 watt to 400 watt output, 73 newton meters of torque. This one spins up a little slower and it stops a little bit slower. But once it kicks in, you have no problem. I mean, I climbed from all the way down there just in the neighborhoods and I really wasn't overexerting myself. And it was fun. You know, you're just up, 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 no problem. And it's quiet. This is one of the quieter mid-drives that I've seen. Again, it's just not super responsive. It does not have shift detection. So when you shift, especially if you're climbing, you're going to a lower gear, it's like a kunk, kunk, you know, and that really concerns me about the chain, about the sprockets, and the derailleur. It is a nice derailleur though. Shimano Dior XT. Trigger shifters up here on the right. Nice locking grips. It's a good bike. All around, it's pretty solid. Definitely trail, mountain capable. But also, you know, if you add that rack, you turn this into a city commuter, something that you could take out on the trails during the weekend. If I was to compare this to the E3 Dash, that's another bike from IZIP. That one's a speed pedelec, and it uses the same motor. So the range might be a little bit decreased, but you're still getting a lot of power. You're still getting a lot of good balance where the weight is right there, low and center. Same battery size, 48 volt. 8.7 amp hours. So if you wanted that higher speed, you could totally go for the Dash, but it doesn't have as nice of a fork. It still has through axle though, which is pretty nice. I wanted to point out the charger here. It's like 1.7 pounds, 2 amps, easy to take with you and toss in your backpack. The range I'd estimate on this bike is maybe 15 to 35 miles, and I'm guessing a little bit higher on this one. I said 15 to 30 on the Dash just because it's a higher power bike. It's going to go faster. I shouldn't say higher power. It's a speed pedelec. It's going to go potentially faster, and you get that air resistance, and it decreases your efficiency a little bit. And I can't say how you'd choose to ride, but that's something that crosses my mind. Love that there's a slap guard, nice pedals, Welgo, big surface, black, they match. Yeah, it's sweet. So let's get into it. To operate this bike, there's a 2-step process. You press the power button here for a couple seconds and it turns on. The battery is removable. You see they've got like a little key here. You just twist it, completely comes off. It's like 6 pounds. Not terrible, but it can be charged on the bike too, so you don't have to take it off. If you're someone like me, you bring your whole bike in. One thing I would be careful of though is just make sure it locks in so you don't accidentally start pedaling and have it flop out on you. Next thing you do is press the power button up here and the display comes on. It does like an 8-second countdown. There we go. Hope that's a little easier to see. It starts us off with speed, miles per hour, 5 little battery bar icons to give you some, just a general idea of how much capacity is left, and that can help you to determine what level of assist to be in. There are 4 levels, so all the way up to 4, that's the most powerful, the highest speed, but your speed is somewhat limited to the gear that you choose. So these mid-drives tend to be efficient because they allow you to basically leverage a more limited range of speeds from a high-power motor and then sort of multiply it by using these sprockets, but you do have to shift gears more often. And if you're in a lower gear and you're like, why am I not hitting 20? Well, shift up. Okay, so arrow down all the way to 1. I've been using 1 a lot. It's just smooth, it's quiet, and it's still a very capable climber. It's not like you have to be, I rode with 1 almost all the way up here. It just felt less jerky to me. Like 4 is like, vroom, like you really get going. So I liked 1. And there is 0. It's a little bit hidden. You hold the power button here for a couple seconds and then 0. And the reason you'd want to do that is because this acts like a cycle computer. Maybe you're coasting, you're on your way down, or you have very little battery left and you just want to use the display, but you don't want the motor to kick in. That's where 0 would come in handy. Just got back inside and I wanted to show you what the backlighting looks like. This does have a light sensor in it, so there's really no way to turn that off. You can turn it on by holding plus, but yeah, doesn't turn it off. If you want to switch from miles per hour to kilometers per hour, you'd hold this little box button and it would do that. And otherwise, you press the box button to switch views. So we go from speed to odometer, 6 miles, distance, we reset that, and range. Range is cool because it actually looks at what level of assist you're in. Right now we're in 1. It says, hey, we think you can go 29 miles based on the battery capacity. And that's after riding all the way up here. Okay, so it's pretty efficient. I'm not a super heavy guy. I'm only like 135 pounds, but yeah, these bikes can really go far. If we arrow all the way up to level 4, it drops way down. This is, again, it's guess for how far we can go per charge, to 15 miles. The display on this is not removable, but it does swivel. That's kind of nice. Yeah, I guess that's sort of it. If you wanted to, I like that they have a kickstand mount on this one. The Tacoma does not have that. If you wanted to, you could spend $50 extra and get this little boost button. It would transform this bike from class 1 to class 2, and that's gonna change where it's permissible to ride. Okay, so this trail, it's okay to ride class 1. I'm not so sure if it's class 2. So this little boost button would mount right there, just in front of the brake lever. Pretty easy to reach, much like the button pad over there. You've got a slower 6 mile per hour button. That'd be great as a walk mode. I actually pushed the bike up because I was kind of cutting across a ditch where they were doing some construction, and it would have been nice to have the bike push itself because this is 49 pounds. It's not super duper light when you have all that and you're pushing it up a hill. So walk mode would be nice. And then this second button here, it's up to 20 miles per hour, just like a standard throttle. So you'd have to hold that the whole time. But it's nice. It's great that they offer this. Some of the older Peak and Dash bikes from IZIP had a throttle built right in. It was just a little twist throttle. Really handy, but then they started to sort of nerf it, and you had to pedal while you were twisting, and it got kind of confusing. So I like just having this separate option, and again, it just changes the class for the bike. So I think that's it. Let's go ahead and hop on this thing and go for a ride, see what it looks like. Okay, I'm in assist level 4, and I'm in one of the lower gears. I'm gonna shift up. I'm going to take it down to assist level 1 for less power, just to see what happens. I got quite a bit quieter when I went to assist level 1, but I still feel like there's so much power. This is definitely one of the more powerful center drive systems I've tested out. Awesome. Pretty much accelerated up that entire hill, and I'm a little winded. I took it all the way up to assist level 4, but it just felt smooth, powerful, and of course I shifted gears to kind of, increase the speed partway there. It responds mostly to cadence. When I was pushing harder, I got pretty much the same motor output. But then of course when I eased off, the motor would kind of fade out. So yeah, I feel like it's a cadence sensor. It works pretty well. Well, that was fun. I hope it gave you a quick overview of what's possible with the Peak. It's an awesome bike, and at $27.99, it's, you know, a couple $100 more than the Dash. You don't get the fenders or the racks or anything, but you do get a nicer suspension fork. You're also limited at that top speed, but if this is what you want to do, and you get those 27.5-inch wheels with the nicer tires, you get 180mm disc brakes on both wheels instead of just on the front. The Dash has 160 on the rear. Just, you know, little things, little decisions. I've got both bikes reviewed back at the site, so you can compare all the specs. It's ElectricBikeReview.com, and of course, ride safe.